Hello, everybody, once again to a brand new episode of Hey Man, It's Okay, a men's mental health podcast. I'm your host, Sky Bridges.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan Heapy, your licensed therapist out of Newport Beach. And Scott, we have a pretty interesting guest today. I was doing a little deep dive earlier and was really fascinated by a lot of the things I saw. So who do we have?
Yeah. So I would say we have an ad agency owner, political activist. He's very passionate about helping you market your gift. We've got Saul Spady on the program today. Welcome to the show, Saul.
Hey guys, it's great to be on the show. Great to say, hey man, it's okay. Thanks for
Yeah.
letting me come and join. And this is so great because between Ryan and Sky, you have a lot of my favorite places. I went to school at Chapman University in the city of Orange, right near where you are in Newport Beach, and played hooky a couple times to the beach, which I think is great for your mental health, bad for your grade. Great for your mental health. And then, of course, Sky, we met at a local music show. And that's always awesome to go from meeting somebody in person at a show, listening to music, and then joining their podcast. It's really cool.
Yeah, man, it was really great because when we talked, I believe we bonded over mental health. That's how we first started talking about how we had a connection to the music community.
Oh, yeah, and love it or hate them, the music community are engaged citizens, and so am I. And I, even though I'm somebody who's supported musicians and put them on and created this incredible gateway between Seattle and South by Southwest for 6 and 7 years, taking bands out to Austin, Texas. When I advocated against what was a $500 per job tax in the city of Seattle, I should have done the polling amongst the music community at that time, but I would have learned that my friends disagreed with me, even though most of the city of Seattle agreed with me. And it was real shitty for my mental health when all those signatures were filed and we succeeded politically, but I lost a lot of my community and my friends. And when I went to my local bar, I'll never forget, like I was having a non-alcoholic beer at a place where I drink a lot with two friends around me. And this guy walked up to behind me and he goes, "Are you Saul Spady?" And I go, "Yep." And he goes, "Fuck you, fascist piece of shit who just wants to make sure homeless people are always homeless and criminalize them. I hate you." And I was like, God, I really want a beer. And I say this to people all the time, whether you agree with my political beliefs or not, and it's not to criminalize homelessness and throw homeless people in jail. I think it's a lot more nuanced than that. But whether you want to engage with me on politics, I do think we should try to be really kind to everybody, man, woman, they, them, race, and try to pursue better mental health, try to pursue a place where we can talk about politics without losing our minds and wanting to kill people. And that's a tale as old as time. People who are rebel rousers on both sides of the aisle often make people feel so much that they themselves put their lives at risk. That's fascinating, whether you're Martin Luther King or many people dislike this man or Donald Trump. One died for their cause and the other one came very close, whether you believe in conspiracy theories or not, which is always super fun. Those make it, the mental health and conspiracy theories are like a match made in Web 2.0 heaven.
I mean, they really are. And boy, those two things I get so excited to actually talk about, but also very fearful to talk about because a lot of people can get very triggered depending on what your maybe political views are. And one thing that that is probably my least favorite quality of many people on the left. There's plenty of things that I see that I disagree on the right, but I think there's a large intolerance to while preaching about tolerance. And I think I was looking at some of your ideas around fixing the homelessness problem and thought there were some really good ideas. I think a lot of these cities, Southern California included, have great intentions when it came to decriminalizing homelessness, or I'm sorry, decriminalizing drug use, and also much more lenient sentences around drug use, but also didn't quite fully think a lot of those things through as to how they were going to affect the communities, but also how they were going to really affect the people on the streets. So kudos to, I don't know, to you for thinking through some of those things.
I appreciate it. For those who haven't done a deep dive on me, I got started years ago when I joined the board of a really impactful charity out here that you probably heard of in Seattle Sky, Mary's Place, where
Yeah,
at the
absolutely.
time
Yeah.
I was one of their youngest members. I had just created this viral movement around my family's burger business, Dick's Drive-Ins. And my mom was like, you should join their board and you should make a viral movement around ending homelessness, which kudos to her. I think I actually accomplished that in many ways. And it came out of kind of this year of being on this board and hearing people point out this problem that we have a lot of, and learning about the problem that we have too many homeless families, which if you get deep on homelessness, it's the easiest group to help. If you get a homeless family off the street, like 90% of the time they don't go homeless again. There's a lot of really in-depth stuff that we got to called diversion and other things that end up being more effective once trying to stop someone from even go homeless. But we were at step one, which is people didn't even believe that people in tents could be families and they didn't want to help. And so I really went to my bread and butter, which is marketing your gift. In this case, the gift of Mary's Place is they did really effective short-term shelter for families at a low cost. And I was talking to the executive director because I was blessed to be on the board. And I was like, hey, Marty, I've heard of these things called crowd funds. If I can raise you $250,000, could you open a short-term shelter, which is a big part of my solution for homelessness right now, which is we need to do a public camping ban and direction to shelter, because that's the beginning of triage, not tents. And this came out of my experience with Mary's Place, which is the moment that we got people off the street and into shelter, we could really figure out their needs. And we raised $250,000. The way I did it is 5 businesses matched. My family, Dick's Drive-Ins, would raise about $10,000 a month for charity using customers' change. So this movement started with like people's change after buying a burger, which is crazy. And then we challenged Vulcan Inc., which is Paul Allen, the late great Paul Allen's corporation, the Space Needle, and Howard S. Wright gave 10,000. Dick's obviously gave 10,000, so that's at the 30,000. And then Evo, the sports store, gave 10,000. And then a guy named Stan Harrelson gave 10,000. And that 10,000, and this is kind of like the marketing your gift playbook, was split into 25,000 was for storytelling, videos, information about homelessness, kind of direction about the cause. And then the other 25,000 went to Facebook ads. And that's 2.5 million impressions, which we targeted to about 150,000 people who had homes and were interested in charity. And that gets to frequency, which is one of our rules to being successful. And we told the story of kids being homeless at frequency, raised that $250,000 year 1. Year 2, we raised $500,000. And year 3, we accomplished really the task, which was to tell a story and get so many people involved. And really, I'm trying to repeat this with politicians and the public camping ban and 3 strikes you go to rehab, is we're like the politicians are going to be the last movers. And in the case of Mary's Place, the huge corporations came along, and they came along in a big way. Starbucks gave 3 million, Amazon gave millions, even innovated a building where they built 9 stories of housing for family homelessness into it. That's really one of the coolest buildings of its kind. And every time I pass by it, I cry, because it's impactful to see the change that you produce by this commitment. And by year 4, we were raising about $5 million a year. The entire business community had gotten behind it, and we'd gotten about 700 to 800 shelter beds onboarded. And to a degree where, whether, homelessness is still a huge issue, obviously this driven by mental illness and addiction. But if you're a homeless family, you can get shelter in Seattle. And I think that model, even the model of getting the corporations to take action by using the people and building a movement, is really important. I will say, and this gets into mental health and mental illness, like over this journey and all these things I've done, you may love me, you may hate me, I will fully admit I have had real mental health problems dealing and being what I call like the conduit for a lot of this movement. And there are moments where I'm so damn grateful that I pursue a movement versus doing it by myself, because I need breaks sometimes. And I'm not as strong as, if people think I'm strong, I'm not that strong. I guess I'm just gritty. I don't give up.
Well, and I definitely want to get into that. I'm just curious, like, what is the pushback that you hear on trying to solve some of these problems? It seems like you've actually worked with them at the ground level and understand people's problems and what helps and what doesn't. And I'm sure you've seen where money gets poorly spent, money that ends up creating an entire building. Yeah, I'm just curious. To me, it all sounds great. So
and this is interesting, because I'll go to the head tax where it was great. Like polling after I stood up and said, this is a huge tax against jobs. It's going to lead to less jobs being available. It's going to accelerate automation. It's going to impact 95% of the jobs in Seattle. 70%, I said it was pushed by anti-growth Democrats, and we need to get behind pro-growth Democrats because this isn't going to solve homelessness. And that was my belief. 70% of the city agreed with me in the grand scheme, even though I was a radical. Dude, you so rarely get moments in politics where 70% of people agree with you, but then 70% of my music friends disagreed with me, and that sucked. And the local art, like kind of arts rag, The Stranger, wrote shitty stuff about me, and they could have called and interviewed me because everyone had my number. And so the pushback is there's always somebody. This is super esoteric and random, but the number one group trying to stop legalization of cannabis in Washington and Colorado was medical marijuana. And that's because they were defending their base. But then there's also just people, I'll bring this up, just yesterday, mental health. A best friend of mine in college, I don't think we're as close now, wrote, "Criminalizing poverty and mental illness, I'm disappointed in you. You're better than this." And I'd say that's a lot of it is people believe you're criminalizing mental health, poverty, and addiction. And to a degree, I don't think you are. I think, one, if you offer somebody shelter, it potentially should be a misdemeanor. Like, I truly believe it should be a misdemeanor to refuse shelter, because if you want to go be a hobo in the forest, go be a hobo in the forest. But if you're trying to be a hobo underneath West Seattle Bridge and you're doing fentanyl and you're potentially either A, putting yourself at risk as a woman to prostitution, or B, as a man, you are committing crimes or being a predator. Like, I think first we have to triage you or offer that triage. If you refuse it, society needs to give ourselves a tool to be able to remove you, because there's all these court cases. And Ryan, you're probably familiar with this, about like mental illness and how you can't like impound somebody because of the being mentally ill, or even impound them for being an addict. But you can actually, and California is super famous for this, 3 strikes, you go to jail forever, which I think is a horrible idea, and put us on this kind of crazy ride to there are no strikes and you can do drugs in the street and you can be an addict outside and you can rob your grocery stores, to the point that in Seattle, we have way less drugstores. Every single business is private security. Elon Musk's dream of private security exists on the streets. And like, literally, you have probably a 10% increase on cost because you have so much private security. They've locked up ice cream in downtown Seattle. Like, you need to get an attendant to unlock ice cream. And all of this does is accelerate Amazon use, accelerate automation, accelerate AI, like all these things we're afraid of. And it's because the West Coast, to a degree, can't get its shit together and clean up these smudged emeralds that we care about. But of course, there's going to be pushback because there's people in power. Like, I'm friends with the politicians. Sky's friends with the politicians. And I'll tell you off the record, maybe not Sky, but like some politicians, like, and off the record, they'll tell me that they agree with me. They'll be like, "Saul, I think you're right on a public camping ban. I think you're right on 3 strikes, you go to rehab. We need these tools." But then they'll say, the voters aren't with us. And like, between all of us here and your listeners, I did polling in King County, which is 70% Democrat, probably looks a lot like LA County. It's 18% independent, 12% conservative, 78% want a public camping ban, 83% want 3 strikes, you go to rehab. But even within this, it's going to be the people in power and the consultants, and like, it's this weird omnibus thing. They call it like the homeless industrial complex. But it's the people, I think, who have put a lot of money into maintaining that you have to be outside, versus putting a lot of money into getting you into short-term shelter and then getting you sober and then getting you into housing. And the worst part of this is it created this dumbest conflation of all time, which is homelessness is housing. And in fact, this is very King County specific, but we're 300,000 units behind. We've built maybe 4,000 houses for homeless people. And like, we failed Sky and me, who need high density housing near the light rail. We failed the homeless person because we haven't gotten them to shelter and sobriety and mitigated them so that when they get shelter, or like permanent shelter, they can thrive. And we've just punted the pooch. And if you want to get super political, maybe this is why we have Donald Trump, because people are pissed about the addiction crisis. And if you want to get even worse, if you're super afraid of Donald Trump, the reason why I think we need to band together and solve this mental illness, addiction, homelessness crisis that's existing on the West Coast and around the United States is because LA and Seattle are booked for world's worst podcast tour of all time, the JD Vance presidential tour, where he's going to conflate two super high polling issues. And he's going to come into these cities, tour Skid Row, tour Third Avenue, the places that our politicians won't go. And he's going to do these made for the media moments. And he's going to say, these people won't stop your kids from going trans, because that polls at 70%. And he's going to be like, and they won't get the addicts into jail, because he's even harder than me. He doesn't want to get into rehab. He just wants to jail them or get rid of them. And like that polls at 70% across America. And he's literally going to use Los Angeles and Seattle as an example, because we can't clean and fix our, I call it the smudged emerald, or if LA's a ruby, it's a graffiti and cracked ruby. And if we're going to have the world's greatest graffiti collection, we might as well invest some dollars into making it look cool versus just having it be miles long.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because I take a lot of time downtown, and there's a big I get a chance to talk to a lot of tourists, and there's a consensus that Seattle isn't safe. Like the nightlife has died down a bit because people are afraid to be out at night. So it's really hard because it's the spirit of Seattle's kind of gone away a little bit. So I think that trying to get some of the people who can be helped a little bit more support and a little bit more help, it would be really great.
And the worst part is, I don't think of Seattle or LA as unsafe. And actually, I think we should have a lot of empathy. Somebody who's on fentanyl, like all of us can outrun them at any moment. Like we've totally been given the slow zombies, but it's just dreadfully sad. And it breaks your heart.
Yeah.
If we want to talk about causing rippling mental illness issues, I'll tell an anecdotal story of a friend of mine who's going to become pretty high up in the realtors org. She was going to a political event in a park with her daughter, and they went to the public restroom. And of course, the public restroom was locked up because we don't have money to have a bathroom attendant. I'm just going to be honest, like total bullshit. And like, then her daughter pissed her pants. And this woman probably has $1 million house, is a super power player in real estate. The woman whose political event she was going to was trying to get her to advocate for her moderate Democrat platform to solve whatever, nothing, maybe everything. And like her quality of life isn't very good. And I go down as nitty gritty as like King County has $40 million it spends on the arts every year, which is more than almost any county in the country. But then you talk to every band and they don't feel like that money goes to gigs in the city. You talk to every venue and it's not accessible to them. And like overnight, LA and Seattle could do both of this. Both of us should. We could take $5 million for our local band, say every venue, park, local coffee shop, bar that pays a musician $300 gets an automatic tax write-off. And we'll do it until the money runs out for the World Cup, because we want people walking down the street and like the dream would be not see a homeless person, have that homeless person go to shelter and then rehab and then continued housing and being paid $25 an hour, or having somebody who does commit crimes go to 6 months of involuntary rehab and go down that same path after they get sober, and then hear all the awesome bands that we know performing down the street, and then go pay oodles of money to go to the World Cup and report back that JD Vance is wrong and that LA and Seattle and Toronto and BC are the best things they've ever seen, because they should be. Our cities are treasures. And that's where, if I want to get, you talked about like issues with Democrats, if I want to talk about some of my issues, and I have those, if I want to talk about with my issues of Republicans, talking down on our cities are fighting words. Our cities are amazing and we preserve them and we create them to be better places. And that's where both the left and the right have totally lost track. And like, I don't even know if they're in pursuit of making our home a better place, which is unfortunate.
And I think their movement, is it your movement? That's aptly titled Quality of Life.
The Quality of Life Coalition. Yeah, it is my movement. It's really fun. I engage with a lot of third parties, and third parties stand for, of course, creating a third party, but they don't really have an issue platform they're behind. And I'm behind solving the addiction and homelessness crisis in America's big cities to lower the cost of living. And maybe it becomes a third party, but I don't have a team. I want Republicans, Democrats, independents, forward party, independent party. This totally date us. Elon Musk, new America party. Probably for EV mandates. We haven't heard yet. Sorry. Like, they all should be for solving the addiction crisis and making America's big cities more livable and invest in the arts, especially up and coming arts, not rich artists. Cooley's fine.
And I think a lot of people probably don't understand how much allowing this crisis to foment is fueling cartels, is just fueling politicians, and most of this money is not actually going to any of these places. We have a place called the Village down here, which is amazing, full wraparound services, just like your Mary's place is. But yeah, are people okay with the homelessness that's going on? Is it almost seen as a badge of honor in some?
No, you brought up Gavin Newsom and your dislike of him, but if you want to have the truffle pig to the movement, Gavin Newsom is like a born and bred politician. And I call myself indie, right? Even my whole thing is like marketing your gift, how to be a major league marketer on an indie budget. Gavin Newsom has all the budget in the world. He has all the polling. And 4 weeks ago, and this got totally lost, but before all the stuff in LA, he called for every city and county in LA to pass a public camping ban. And that's because people are done. Like that, he probably saw a poll that showed 70% of California wants a public camping ban. When Gavin Newsom does polling on my 3 strikes, you go to 6 months of involuntary rehab, mark my words, we're going to have to come back to this podcast. You're going to hear him mention it because politicians, the smart ones anyways, go to where the people are and then they lead them to solutions. Right. If you want the opposite of Gavin Newsom, Donald Trump ran on an issue that he's getting lost on, which is a super complicated issue, which is immigration. But 70% of America agreed that if you're an illegal immigrant and you're committing crimes, we should deport you. Also, 70% of America agreed we should not let people come through our southern border willy-nilly for whatever reason. Now, on the flip, and this is why millions of people are protesting in the street and Donald Trump is missing the polling, 70% of people don't want an illegal immigrant who's in good standing deported, and we would rather give them a path to amnesty. And that's where, it is valuable to go into a nursing home or into a restaurant or into somebody's cherry orchard in Washington or apple orchard and remove Juan, who's here semi-legally on a worker's grant for no reason. Like, it just costs society and causes pain and hurts people. And that's where I think, I don't know. I get really sad about all of this because there are people who are always going to disagree with me. And it's because I'm engaging with society in an open way. And amen, you should. We're so blessed to live in a free society. And I made this joke with you guys offline, but I pray for mental happiness and mental strength. All of us deal with the total shit show that is the internet and memes and our politicians acting like we're on the next season of a reality show, which if you want, Donald Trump is totally on a reality show timeline. Reality TV is built around the belief that narrative dramas are stupid. You shouldn't have a plan, that you should actually do 3 to 4 seasons of reality TV, pump it out, make tons of money, keep the action going. Your ratings create more ratings. And that's why we're on season 35 of Survivor or 100 or whatever. And we're pretty much probably on season 2 of the presidency part 2 already. And the end of season 1 was Elon Musk getting fired. We thought it was the fall guy for the other dude, but in fact it was Elon, which was a way better finale. And now let's just sit on our britches for what season 2 is going to be. But I don't want to get everybody excited. It's about tariffs. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's about something else. We didn't even see Iran coming. That was Taco gonna bomb Iran because I have America's military. That's very reality TV. Everyone was oh my God, he just bombed Iran on gut. And it's, yeah, that guy's mental health has to be through the roof. Sorry, no, that's a joke. I think he might have some issues, but in narcissism and all that. But I don't know. It's just really complicated having a voice and being out there. And I wish people were all kinder to each other and we'll never see it, but AOC and Dan Crenshaw and Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump should have one day where they all kumbaya with each other and eat snacks and watch Rick and Morty. But they won't. If they did it on Twitch, brought to you by Twitch.
I think you get to what at least my main disappointment is in all of this is really the inability of each one of us to have just an honest conversation with somebody who does disagree with us, to try to be empathetic to that idea. I probably have more clients that are on the right than are on the left, just being in Newport, being in Orange County. And that's given me a lot of real, having the perspective of both people was like, I don't ever hear anybody come in with real ill intentions. Like, I don't have any real racists as clients. They do just have different, in a sense, and people might not actually believe this, but like real different first principles on some of these problems. And whatever that is, I don't think you should lose friends over it. Like, I don't think people should be disavowing you for a different idea, for believing in a different team. And I think it destroys sometimes very good ideas. For instance, maybe there's a better idea how to solve homelessness. And maybe that is coming from the right. Maybe we just don't, but a lot of people might not know if you can't have a real conversation without getting, and maybe where the therapists come in, is too emotionally worked up. And I get that some of those society's problems have very real world impacts, but I still feel like we can all do a better job regulate our emotions and having more empathy, no matter where you are on the spectrum. And it's really disappointing to hear how much that it affects somebody who is, and I'm believing the same of you, that is in good faith, who has actually worked with the homeless at a ground level, actually raised money for them, that then you're thrown under the bus for a slightly different idea. And that really, if I could have like a crusade, it would be to come back to some sense of community, no matter where we're at on the political spectrum, and to have empathy and listen to one another again.
My term for it was the rational opposition. We all should try to be that person, but to be rational and to oppose somebody, you have to start from a place where you believe that they're a good person, right? I
Yeah,
could
I 100%
disagree
agree.
with Mom Donnie or AOC or Dan Crenshaw or my local mayor, Bruce Harrell. With Bruce, I come back to, we both love UW football. With Mom Donnie, I don't agree with his solutions in New York, but man, he's saying a lot of the same problems. Small businesses aren't working. People are frustrated. The $1.50 pizza's gone. Permitting is so not working. Now, he presents some things I don't agree with, like you publicly run grocery stores. Don't do that. Just give grocery stores free rent. If you like help people who know how to sell groceries, do that. Allow, and we're doing this in Seattle a little bit, allow small businesses to take up empty bottom floor retail. And because wouldn't we rather, if developers say they make nothing on bottom floor retail and small business can't succeed, maybe and this is one of my other ideas, we incentivize developers with more stories up, because developers will tell you they make money on higher story buildings. And now we've got something we can trade in I think the only way we make it is a public-private partnership. But yeah, America has a housing crisis. Will it help if we have a lot more housing to solve the mental illness crisis? Probably. But if somebody is addicted to fentanyl, I strongly believe in stealing that ice cream, or like the worst, OD'd 5 times on the streets. Like at a certain point, society needs to cut the cord on that, get them 6 months of involuntary rehab, because the doctors of America who feel real bad about fentanyl, like they had nothing to do with it, but they feel bad and they've done some research and they've said, if you're addicted to fentanyl or meth, you need 6 months of involuntary rehab. Like that idea isn't coming from Saul just pulling a number out. A lot of doctors tell me it should be a year. I just don't think society is ready for that level. Like we can barely, like we've been so against even a hand slap that I'm finding that safe space. And if you want the real joke, I went super viral because I presented this idea as 10 strikes. You go to 6 months of rehab. And then a local politician said I'd created the next great solution in the school to prison pipeline, which, if you're listening, you don't get it. She was like calling me racist and saying I was coming up with a way to move black and brown and Asian people into the next level of internment for their poorness and criminalizing it. And like the joke is, and maybe you get this, Ryan, and I don't know who you imagine, but like when I came up with that whole idea, I was just imagining a cracked out white dude that like chases me down the street and doesn't even ask for money. It's just, and like they've been other races too. And like I guess if you wanted to nail me, I was like thinking of a really cracked out white dude. And it really bummed me out that this person heard my concept of how to help with the addiction crisis that we clearly see and made it about race. But that was 6 years ago. I lost a ton of friends. Now the polling has completely flipped. And like a really lame person would have let that mentally affect them, which I totally did. I'm super lame. But then an epic person will rise back, like your own hero journey, or I guess some people would say my villain journey, which like whatever, and become bigger, better, stronger, and like ready to deal with it. And the best part about my new political movement is I chose this one. I'm ready. I'm aware of what's going to come, and I'm not going to have some of the pitfalls. I'm going to have issues and I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm not going to have the mental pitfalls I think I did before, because I didn't expect to lose my, this is so stupid. I didn't expect to lose friends over becoming a conservative talk radio show host. If you ever listen to my radio show, I had tons of bands on. I would have been a Democrat in any other city other than Seattle, but I went before Rush Limbaugh and boo me.
So tell us what that was like on where you're at now, mentally, what that's to, and I think almost Sky, hopefully I'm not speaking too much here, but to be excommunicated from your community, no matter what that community, traumatizing. And
For sure. Yeah.
I mean, it's heartbreaking. And well, you might feel gaslit. You might feel like your whole world has been turned upside down. Everybody you thought you could count on is no
Betrayed,
longer
maybe.
there for you. Yeah.
Going back to, I loved something that your last podcast guest said, which is like emotions are timeless but our bodies are physically in the present. And it's funny because I always ask people all the time, and ask yourself this: what part of you lives in the past, present, and future? And that was one of the best iterations I've ever heard to my question, because like now that it feels, it really anchors my question. And like I shift. Like one of my favorite things is we also shift. It's a trick question actually for job interviews. If you ever get this, it's to see if you can add up to 100. But like 30% of me exists in the past, like 50% of me exists in the present, and 20% of me exists in the future. But if I go back to that, it was horrible. It was awesome because like I'm like, if you think I'm a narcissist, I guess I'll agree to it a little bit. Like I loved being on air and I loved having that community. And I had 10,000 people that listened to me every day. And I responded to every text message, and I felt like I became a better, wiser person. My audience didn't become me, but every day we had an incredible dialogue about what was an absolutely insane period of time between Trump shutting down the government in 2019. And then pretty much my last show was like 2 days before COVID, like the first cases popped up. And I had some really in-depth like things where I was even like talking with a young journalist I was advising who was in Hong Kong, and I'd helped him like start to fly over there and do reporting on their freedom movement. And like in December, he told me, he's like, hey, they're talking about all these morgues they're building in Wuhan, and people are worried like, hey, there's this pandemic, and this is so conspiracy theory level. So I apologize to everybody if this sets you off, and get a therapist if you go down a rabbit hole. But he was like, we talked about how we thought that like maybe they had released the pandemic later because they were trying to stop the freedom movement in Hong Kong in China. And that like totally backs up people who believe it's man-made or whether it was not. And it doesn't really matter. A pandemic happened. I was totally wrong. I was like, oh, I don't think a pandemic's going to happen. So like mental health, don't make predictions and sit on them, just to make a bet and walk away. I'll admit it later. But the worst part of all of it, and this goes back to the head tax, is I grew up in a really political family, and my parents were super involved. And one of the reasons why I'm so good with ordinances and initiatives and referendums is because my parents would gather millions of signatures to try to get charter schools on the ballot in Washington. And they did that 5 times. They failed every time except the last one. So from 1996 to 2012, they failed and then they succeeded. And my sister runs our family business, and I don't want to get into this at all, but like right or wrong, she really doesn't think politics should any place in business. We went down very different paths growing up, where she's not a huge political fan. She has her own political beliefs, but she doesn't, like I said, she doesn't think she should be part of business. And I've been active in politics my entire life. For God's sakes, I had a radio show before Rush Limbaugh. My ratings were good. And I'm one of the only people that's helped repeal a head tax in the country alongside Rahm Emanuel, who's talking about running for president. That's cool. And I try to give myself ups for that, even if you disagree with that action. But my sister didn't like what I did, and that caused conflict in my family. And then we talk about the arts community a lot, the people who are in it. That's kind of like your other family. And to lose that for what you believe in. And the shocking bit is I didn't even really know what I was like. I knew what I was doing. And a lot of what I do is driven by like having tons of conversations. And we'll get into like the nitty gritty of polling. But if you just talk to 400 random people in Newport and you ask them a question, you have probably done a poll. And I talk to people all the time. And that's why I knew most people were against the head tax. I didn't talk to enough of my music friends to get a sense of them. So I didn't do the sub-targeting correct. And to lose my music community and my family over what I thought was right. Because I just had this interview where my hair looked crazy, and it's crazy. You can't even find it anymore, which is really sad because it got scrubbed from the internet. But it went super viral on Facebook. I got 1,200 shares, and people just wanted to help gather signatures. And we gathered 30,000 signatures. And I wish I'd been prepared for it all. And all I can say is on this round, I've done a lot more therapy between now and then. I'm seeing my therapist on Friday because I've been doing a ton of therapy, but then I stopped for a bit and I really feel like I need it. And like, it's something I wanted to talk about. It's buried in here, but I met a good friend of mine who was very passionate politically. His family's kind of prominent in Seattle. And he was one of the first people I was going to do this movement. 5 years later, he'd helped with the head tax, gathering signatures. And then 5 days later, he killed himself. And there had been press about his family in the media, and I don't really want to talk about them at all because they've been very quiet about it, and they have every right to be. I know those articles weighed on him. I knew my friend wasn't well, and like I even have this deep regret of I called another friend saying I think they're going to lose their job, and like they might need a job, and I think they just need kindness. And I didn't check in for 4 days, and like we only talk every couple of weeks, and we only see each other like once a quarter, and we all have these friends. And like now I'm doing this movement without my friend in honor of them. And that's been very hard. And I've desperately wanted to talk about their suicide. And you really also can't because it's this family that you're trying to be respectful towards. And for everybody out there, it's a theme. I've said it a couple times. I hope you hear it. Republican, Democrat, Democratic Socialist. Like, God, people should be much nicer to Mamdani. He's pushing his narrative and he's trying to make his city a better place. Maybe he'll fail, but we have a democracy for a reason, and he's connecting with a lot of people and he's inspiring a lot of people. And we should be much, much kinder. But for all those people that are angry about Mamdani, like, I don't know what type of walls Donald Trump has built, but holy shit, I don't even want people to think about it this deeply, but he is very tied into social media. Taco went super viral. Trump always chickens out. And then what did he do? Bomb Iran. And is he mentally? Probably not. Is anyone who's president? Was Obama mentally when he's president? Probably not. Bush. Like, boy, we always talk about them carrying a burden, and they are. And whether it's President Biden or President Trump, or if it had been President Harris, I disagree with them, but I call them president because they have taken on one heck of a mental health journey, as has your city council members, your school board members, your friend who does a stupid ordinance like me. And just be a little fucking kinder, people. That's all I have to say.
Honestly, I always wanted to, if I hadn't gotten into nightlife kind of haphazardly growing up, I definitely probably would have chosen politics to get into. And Now there is not a chance in the world. There's so much backlash you'd have to face, no matter what party you're in, or even just like you said, at the local level, with the amount of people who instant hate you. How are you preparing this time? What could you have been better prepared for? I don't think you can ever be prepared to lose a friend. But yeah, what are some of the, if you're okay with, what are some of the things maybe your therapist is helping you with that you think will hopefully help in the resiliency and withstanding the storm here?
Life's baseball. I love baseball. Shout out if you're a Seattle Mariners fan. You have no more toxic relationship in your life than the Seattle Mariners. No, go deep on that. Like, think of the ex that you never believe will come through, that you won't give up on, that you spend money on, that like you probably have to drink your way through. That's the Seattle Mariners. And then you come back every year, just like every summer. You're like, maybe, baby, maybe this is the year. I've done it already. I had that radio show. I went through the trials of that, of being, I always called myself a pundit, and we should like really try to be careful of who we call journalists and who we call like opinion creators. And one of my favorite things I said on my radio show, because it was just me and my producer, and there was this other radio show, this epic legend named Dave Ross, that like he had a team of 10, and they were all like, Dave Ross, breaking news in the morning. And people are like, why aren't you breaking news, Saul? You always talk about yesterday's news. And I was like, man, because I don't have the team to break news. We are getting Saul's opinion of yesterday's news. And does that educate you? Yes. Was it an epic conversation? And to get into the place that probably where I found the most mental health, and this is where people like are so afraid, but like my show was toast. I was an independent, not Trump fan, not Trump enemy. Before Rush Limbaugh, Trump was in office advocating for trying to build bridges with Democrats and independents to make our cities a better place, being pro-choice, pro-gay marriage, pro-cannabis. I'm also like, I do mushrooms with musicians, so I don't want to gaslight my musician friends, so I'm pro-mushrooms, right? I'm vehemently anti-fentanyl and meth. I think if you deal meth and fentanyl, you should go to jail for 5 years because you're probably committing manslaughter in some form on the street, and that's a real conversation to be had. I want addicts getting to 6 months of involuntary rehab, and I'm saying all these things because like, I just have beliefs. And so of course I have conflict with people because people want to have conversation with that. And my show wasn't working. And then I remembered something I'd said to this politician, and I'd advised him to respond to the comments on his Facebook. And he told me that he doesn't like responding because everyone's yelling. And I was like, yeah, they're yelling because you don't respond. This is classic. This is therapy 101. Like, your wife's yelling at you, my daughter's yelling at you, I'm yelling at you, whatever. Why is the yelling happen? It's because we're not listening. We're not slowing down. We're not having a conversation. And my boss, he's a legend in radio, Jason Rant, and he's always been a good advisor and mentor, and talk to advisors and mentors about your mental health, because Jason deals with a lot of it and he has a lot of opinions, many that I disagree with. But we're still friends and we still have that open dialogue. And Jason gave me bad advice. He said, I never respond to the text message. It's only toxic. It's only going to be people yelling. And I finally was like, I got to respond. I got to listen to my gut, which is I've always told politicians to have that conversation. And my show became something amazing. Yes, it didn't get renewed, but I had at the end 200 text messages a show. I responded to every single one. When I did a show advocating for why we should let women have the right to choose, which is something I'm very passionate about, sharing personal experiences I've had with partners who've had miscarriages and why my thoughts on that. A woman texted in writing about how she is pro-life, but she got an abortion because she had been raped and got pregnant, and she stands by her decision, and she believes other women should be able to have that decision. And so she's always had a tough time advocating both her belief that you shouldn't abort a pregnancy, but that she thinks you should be able to, and that she really thinks people should get off my back for being pro-choice. And I was the conduit for that woman to have that. And then I later met her in person, and like we hugged, and that was beautiful. I do not know what I am built of, and I think I'm rather gritty. Again, have empathy for your enemies and for the people you support, but I think I have built up systems to channel what other people have experienced and not internalize it, but let it pass through me, while also respecting that person's opinion. And like, I don't know if I could have gotten good at that if I didn't do that 200 times a day for 5 days a week. That's a lot of practice. Salespeople are great code switchers and really empathetic because, like, in a unique way, just like politicians sometimes are, because they engage with so many people. And it's something that always shocks you. And you probably get this a little bit, Sky, if you've ever met a politician, or Ryan. You may dislike a politician, but you meet them and you come away, wow, they were like really, you're like, whoa, you're
Usually they're
into it.
charming. Yeah, usually they're charming.
And that's a salesperson, right? And there's a little bit of empathy to that, because like they actually do receive a lot of people's inputs and they have to pick and choose. And one of my favorite super random political issues, I wish we built waste to energy management plants, which are pretty much just trash incinerators where you encapsulate the CO2. They do it all over Europe. It's the giant flowers and crazy rich Asians is actually a trash incinerator. The one in Copenhagen is a ski area on top. They're super cool. Technology checks out. They pay for themselves because they produce energy that goes back into the grid. It's epic. And I remember talking to a local politician, Kathy Lambert, and another one who I can't remember. One was a Republican, one was a Democrat. They were both huge advocates to waste energy. And they told me like how we thought we had the votes, but then they brought in all these kids and people who were like, do you want little Susie breathing in trash fumes? And I totally get it. You're afraid of, you think we're just going to go light the dump on fire and there's no science. And to a degree, politicians have to have this strength to see little Susie go meet with that guy later and even say, hey, I'm not going to vote with you. And this is the reason why. And you may always disagree with me, but in the end, I hope you come meet with me in 10 years when our dump is a golf course with low cost housing on it. And isn't that cooler than what our current dump is, which has bald eagles flying down and they shoot fireworks at them sometimes. And that, amen, America.
I guess my last question for you, Saul, would be like, you're dealing with all of this and you are in the public eye. How do you deal with that when you're in a place where, man, you just need support with your mental health?
Oh man, I don't know. Like I went golfing today and that felt great. I talked to a lot of friends. This is such a mantra for political people. This is like a football coach who's had a string of losses, but he's like, trust the playbook. You got to trust the polling. The polling says the people are with me. The Democrats, the Republicans, and the independents want to have a better quality of life. They want to have live music on their streets. They don't want to see homeless people with addiction issues. They want to try to help them somehow. They want to have the housing units built. They want high density near the light rail, even though NIMBYs exist. Like the Not in My Backyard dies 5 blocks from the light rail. Everyone thinks we should have 20-story buildings within 5 blocks of the multi-billion-dollar LA light rail or the multi-billion-dollar Seattle light rail. You do things like this, honestly. Hey man, it's okay. I've been like so looking forward to being on your podcast because I cried and I got to talk about some shit and like I'm processing. Super Mariners shout out, but I went to the Mariners game last night and I went and ate my buddy's favorite dish. Like there's the Way Back Crab Shack. It's super delicious and it's got this crab sandwich and I had a couple beers and I just cried and it was good. And like, it's okay to be vulnerable. And like one of my deepest fears is the things that are on this podcast are used against me in the field of battle. And then I think about that and I'm like, oh, that's so cool. There's some like Democratic or Republican operative who had to listen to the Hey Man, It's Okay podcast. Maybe they listened to a couple. And I hope you got your dirt on me that you were looking for. But I also hope whoever you are, you found yourself to a better mental health place and maybe can be more supportive of the candidate you're helping. Right? Like I try to take a really positive track with all of it because life is totally short and we are all in the public. Some of us are in the public eye and those of us who are in the public eye are undergoing things we weren't ready to deal with. And I'll never forget my friend, some of his last words to me were like, I have all these other things that I've committed myself to, and it's easier because we were talking about losing your family business potentially. And I lost working for my family business because of my political work in many ways and my own decisions. And I'm I'm glad I went through those trials, and I'm glad I have all these other passions. And I'm really glad I've engaged so many people that agree and disagree with me in conversation, because that's really beautiful. And if I am so lucky to create a movement to make our cities a better place, and then maybe go further and be a part of a third party or a schism in our political parties that pushes for funding for addiction rehab and the 6 months involuntary rehab that I think we need. And maybe we cut permitting to build the housing. Like, it's by building No Child Sleeps Outside, it led to Jeff Bezos having the brilliant idea to put, apartment buildings for homeless families into his office building. Like, I had no idea that's what was going to be one of the repercussions of advocating for helping homeless families. But boy, was that cool, right? Like, for all of you, whether it's marketing your gift or marketing
Yeah.
your movement or marketing your podcast, like, step out into the field of battle. I joked on my radio show, but we are all gladiators in the content coliseum. And grab your post and caption your videos and do your messaging, but get out there and engage with people and be a real human being and be the rational opposition in whatever form you think is right. And maybe the world will become a better place, and maybe we will meet each other on the field of battle and have a beer and disagree or agree. And that would be cool. And if you don't drink, we can have fake beers. Brought to you by Athletic Brewing. Because, hey, man, it's okay. I love Athletic Brewing. Be sober curious, because, like, you guys want sponsors for your podcast, and we all want to succeed and have budget and be a better person. I'll leave it at that, Sky. I don't know. That was a bit of a ramble.
Great. No, it's great. Saul, where can our listeners find you? Where can they find your ad agency? Where can they find how to follow you politically? Give us all the deets.
Yeah, all my places. I should have done this at the beginning because no one listens to the end. But yeah, you can find me at Creative Empowerment for my ad agency. It's CRE, the numeral 8, 8IVEEMPOWERMT. I have a website you can't find. My political movement, it's easier because I want you to find that. That's King County. That's the county that we're in here, that Sky and I are in. King County QOL.com. That stands for Quality of Life Coalition. It's the QOL Coalition on Insta and all the socials. And then for me, if you just want to follow me, and I'm pretty entertaining, I'd say Instagram's the best one, but all of my socials are at Saul Spady, SAULSPADY. And seriously, I'd love to engage with all of you. Shameless plug. If you want to do marketing better, I call it my marketing your gift workshop, and you can pay me real dollars, $500, and I'll be like your marketing tennis coach. I can't guarantee you'll make Wimbledon, but we'll definitely get more podcast listeners.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another really fun episode of Hey Man, It's Okay. When we get real, when we can get deep and honest and vulnerable, it's when we can have these really amazing breakthroughs and conversations. So thanks for sticking with us while we had one of these really great conversations.
Thank you so much, Saul. It was absolute pleasure. And I think even more importantly, I love that you have so much passion for making this place a better place. And whether you agree or disagree, you got to give it to people who truly, from their heart, are wanting to better everyone's mental health. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
You helped
thanks.
me a lot. It's so great being on Hey Man, It's Okay. If you ever doing cuts of it, put me on a promo. Hey Man, It's Okay. I believe in this shit. I'm Saul Spady. Nobody politician, but maybe one day I'll be big.
You do have an amazing radio voice, that's for sure.
For sure. We'll have to hire you to do our announcements from this point forward. But yeah, everybody, please make sure to check out our website, heymanitsokay.com, and like, comment, subscribe, send us an email, and we'd love to hear from you too. And until next time, everybody, it's okay to not be okay. Thanks for tuning in.